And I'm gonna be reading from my laptop right here because I am looking at these articles, and it's about how war creates poverty. All right. So war. How does war creates poverty? I'm reading from this. Lex, it's an AI overview here. AI. Oh yeah, AI overview. So disrupt. So they're talking about war, disrupting livelihoods, destroying infrastructure, and undermining economies. War causes poverty by disrupting livelihoods, destroying infrastructure, and undermining economies. Specifically, war leads to higher deprivations in essential services such as electricity, education, and nutrition, particularly in conflict affected countries. Additionally, poverty reduction is significantly slower in these regions, exacerbating the cycle of poverty. Furthermore, war impacts those already living in poverty, making it increasingly difficult for them to recover and improve their conditions. So I'm gonna go down here and click on this one here. Let me see. Come on. Come on. No, don't want to let me do that. All right, let's try this. Computer is loading, so because I'm reading from these articles. So here we go. I think they're gonna touch on the Russian. Let's go back and see. Let's go back and see what would happen if I go back here. Come on. All right, let's scroll down and see what we got here. See if they will give me anything else. No. Okay, so we're looking at. Come on. I thought they would have given me something more. So let's try this and see what would happen here. How war fuels poverty. So I think we're going to go on. So how war fuels poverty. So from Ukraine to Tigray, conflict causes devastating consequences beyond the immediate violence. All right. So, oh, come on. Come on. All right. So, this is by Joe McCarthy. This is March 1st, 2022. So, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has brought a new war into existence, a grim turn of events that promises brutal consequences. As the United Nations has noted, the first priority for everyone involved should be to end the conflict. The longer the violence continues, the more people will suffer and die. Peace is the only legitimate option. But even if the bombs and bullets stop right away, it would take years to recover from the devastation. That's because war seeks to shatter the foundation of a society, fragmenting communities, destroying infrastructure, and undermining the economy and provision of social services. So this is what war does, folks. And they keep on telling us, is let's go to war, let's go to war. And when just remember, whenever we have a war, this is what happened here. All right. From a purely economic point of view, war fuels poverty because of how it disrupts livelihoods and access to money. So there you go. War prevents you from actually getting to the money, the bag. All right. The Institute for Economic and Peace found that the 10 most conflict affected countries lost an average of 41% of their economic output as a result of violence. But if we broaden the definition of poverty to include the basic necessities of life, then nothing fuels poverty like war, which is catastrophic to human well being. Scroll up here. The months and years ahead will involve grinding poverty in Ukraine and even Russia, which has faced extreme economic repercussions as a result of President Vladimir Putin's actions. So that means they sanction the Russian economies. That's what they are saying here. Hints at what the future holds can be seen in countries like Syria, Yemen, Ethiopia, and Afghanistan, where the pressures of conflict have made daily life a struggle for survival. All right. Hey, what's up, Jeffrey? So, three things to know about how war fuels poverty. War disrupts food systems by undermining food production, causing rapid inflation of food prices, and preventing people from earning money to buy food. So that's what war does, folks. War destroys key infrastructures that supports daily life, from water system to energy centers to hospitals. War displaces people from their homes, forces children from the classroom, worsens gender inequality, and exposes people to extreme levels of violence. Yes, because I can see men might be able to handle these conflict zones better, might be men might be able to function better in these conflict zones. Women might be harder for women in those conflict zones. So that's why they are saying it causes gender inequality. So how does war fuel poverty and its systemic causes? So smoke rises over Saif al-Dala district in Aleppo, Syria, Tuesday, October 2nd, 2012. There are 27 active conflicts around the world, according to the Council on Foreign Relations. These people would know because these guys keep track of what's going on around the world. Some of these conflicts have been going on for decades, others for only a few years. In all cases, the results have been disastrous. In Yemen, years of civil war and the Saudi-led bombing campaigns have created the world's worst humanitarian crisis. More than 21 million people in the country, including 11 million children, need urgent humanitarian aid. Roughly 16.2 million people struggle to get even the barest amount of food needed to survive. Public health crises from the COVID 19 pandemic to cholera. Cholera outbreak have overwhelmed the country's understaffed and under-resourced health system. Humanitarian groups are drilling new wells to ensure people have enough water to live. So these conflict zones are no joke, folks, and normally they don't really tell us this, folks. You know what I mean? They just say, "Oh, we're gonna go to war," and not explaining to you the consequences of dropping bombs on people. So, 10 years of war in Syria have left more than 350,000 people dead, and generated 6.6 million refugees and 6.4 million internally displaced people. War drove people from out of their homes. All right. For millions of children, formal education has become impossible or a stressful experience. Hundreds of schools have been bombed and many others lack adequate sanitation, heating and ventilation, and electricity, not to mention not to mention too few teachers. The ongoing civil war in Ethiopia has caused famine-like conditions for 400,000 people, disrupting the supply of 80% of essential medication and pushed more than 2 million people from their homes, according to the BBC. A full-scale humanitarian crisis is unfolding in Ethiopia's Tigray region. UNHCR, that's the UN for Human Rights. So the recent takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban after 20 years of US-led conflict has created the country's economy so much so that some people are selling their organs to afford bread. You hear that? Yeah. So people are selling their organs to buy bread, to buy basics, something to eat. So women's rights after improving for several years have been drastically curtailed. Yes, because the Taliban come back to power, and they don't really, like putting women into having women in schools. Yeah. So there are countless local and geopolitical factors at play in every conflict that makes them unique. For example, harsh sanctions which can devastate local communities exactly, have exacerbated poverty in Afghanistan as humanitarian organizations call on the US to resume international aid and allow the country's people to access financial resources. But there are broad trends that exist in numerous contexts. So for example, violence against women surges during conflicts. As legal systems break down, women face domestic violence at home. When invading armies enter a community, sexual violence is often wielded as a cruel weapon. Yes, like what's going on in Syria right now. Governments often lose the ability to provide basic social services like garbage collection, well-funded schools, and income assistance. War also ravages the integrity of environments as modern weapons pollute the air, soil, and bodies of water and destroy ecosystems. So when they are dropping bombs and not explaining to you that the damage that these bombs are causing, but anyways, but go ahead and drop bombs. Why not, right? After any disaster, inequality tends to worsen as the rich and well connected take advantage of vacuums of power in governance, industry, and resources for their own gain. Of course, the strong is going to take over. So the rich and wealthy are the strongest people in society. Of course, they are going to take over and gain more access to land and whatever other resources. You know, and the violence and the mayhem of war inevitably leads to extreme levels of displacement. Of course, these people are looking for somewhere to stay now because you destroy their house, their homes, and any other places of shelter. 'Cause that's what they are doing. Ukraine's worst in crisis. A woman and a child peer out of the window of a bus as they leave Sievierodonetsk, the Luhansk region, eastern Ukraine, February 24, 2022. So, this image is by Vadim Girada. In Ukraine, the outline of how the war will fuel poverty is already apparent. In less than 2 weeks, 2 million refugees have fled the country, an exodus that could deplete the country's workforce for years to come and deprive families of primary sources of income. So there you go, folks. When there's a war, the manpower is gone. All right, the workers, the people who to work in all these factories and all these infrastructures or these places that actually make the country run, they flee, they run away. They are not there to work anymore. All right. So the economy has largely come to a standstill with only the most essential sectors operating as all attention is directed towards defending communities and surviving. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Fight and survive. All right. This economic suspension is reverberating around the world as energy prices climb and food systems brace for a shortage of key staples like wheat and corn. Of course, because when there's a war, the farmers can't really just get to just go out there into the field and go plow. A stray, whatever bullet or something might come by and just knock this guy down. You know what I mean? And they don't want to get killed, so they prefer to just stay home or run away, go to a different country or a safer place in that country. Conflict is number one driver of food shortages according to the World Food Program. Conflict is the number one driver of food shortages according to the World Food Program. All right, which has been providing food assistance to more than 1 million people in the eastern part of Ukraine since the country's uprising in 2014. In the country's capital, food and water shortages have already been reported. The WPF notes disclosed WPF is a funding partner of Global Citizens. So these are journalists. All right. As bombs fall on Ukraine, key pieces of infrastructure, roads, hospitals, bridges, irrigation system, energy storage centers, and residential buildings are being destroyed. Rebuilding in the aftermath of the conflict will consume huge sums of money, likely dominating Ukraine's budget. Of course, it took years to build up these buildings, folks, and within a couple of months they can actually destroy all these buildings by dropping bombs on people. Air war, cruelty. That's what ear war is. While violence is the most immediate threat to public health in conflict zones, the possibility of disease outbreaks increases, and ordinary illnesses are more likely to turn deadly. That's because health centers tend to focus on threatening the war wounded people. Uh, uh, um, tr- that's because the health centers tend to focus on treating the war wounded people, may avoid hospitals for fear of violence. Healthcare workers often become overworked, facilities could lose electricity or encounter attacks, and the resources could become scarce. Oxygen tanks, for example, are on the brink of running out in the country. Black people in Ukraine are reporting racism while trying to leave. So war has led to these type of you know prejudices as well. This happens in Libya as well. When they attacked Libya, the black people there started to face hell. As always, conflict can also ruin childhoods. In recent days, schools in Ukraine have understandably shut down, leaving 350,000 students without a formal education as the fighting continues. Children are becoming deeply traumatized and even orphaned. Helping children overcome this trauma will require intensive support, care, and resources, things that are often absent in conflict zones. This is how today's war bleed into the future. Family members and friends die, loved ones get uprooted and displaced, communities rupture and disintegrate, and entire towns and cities become husk. Putting the pieces back together is not as easy as returning to a neighborhood when the violence subsides and putting up memorials to those lost. The violence stays with survivors. Reconciliation offers a path forward, but because war changes everything, the future will never be the same as the past. Only global solidarity, financial support, and a commitment to peace can help a country recover from such a catastrophic event. What can global citizens do to help? Everyone has a role to play in ending conflicts. We can call on legislators to engage in urgent diplomacy, fund humanitarian relief efforts, and support United Nations peacekeeping efforts. We can raise awareness and donate to communities affected by war and organizations seeking to end war and establish peace. There are many ways people can help right now when it comes to the conflicts mentioned above. Here's how you can help people in Ukraine, Afghanistan, and Syria. So that's the end of the article there, folks. And this article here shows you how war creates poverty. I am going to go a bit more. I'm gonna be a bit more specific. I'm gonna go to some other countries and go see specifically how war has how war has caused poverty in those specific countries. So we have Libya, Syria, Iraq, you know, of course most recent here is Gaza. And I'm gonna start take a look in those war-torn countries and see how war actually create fuels, how war fuels poverty in those countries. So let me see if they will let me do this here. Um, so I'm trying to get to see if I could see how I can so I'm gonna look at this article here. Say nearly half the world's 1.1 billion poor live in conflict. That's interesting. So let's take a look at it and see what happened. Yes, folks. So we are looking at how war fuels poverty. That's what we're looking at right now. So nearly half the world's 1.1 billion poor live in conflict settings. So now you can see why they are poor, because they're living in these conflict zones. More than a billion people worldwide live in acute poverty, and 40% are in countries exposed to violent conflict, according to a UN-backed study published on Thursday. So this is October 17, 2024. The finding comes in the latest update to the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index, MPI, jointly published by the UN Development Program, UNDP, and the Oxford Poverty and Humanitarian Development Initiative, OPHI, at the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom. So this is a university study. All right. So conflict disrupting lives. The MPI was launched in 2010, and this year's edition features research across 112 countries and 6.3 billion people. It found that 1.1 billion are living in acute poverty, and a staggering 455 million are in the countries experiencing war or fragility. Conflicts have intensified and multiplied in recent years, reaching new highs in casualties, displacing record millions of people, and causing widespread disruption to lives and livelihoods, said Akeem Steiner, the UNDP administrator, deprived of basic needs. Poverty reduction tends to be the slowest in countries most affected by conflict, where poverty is often the highest. How can you find time to reduce poverty if you have to be running from your homes? You cannot, you don't have time to go to work to earn money or anything like that. So, yes, that's going to be a problem. Countries at war have higher deprivations across all indicators of multidimensional poverty, such as lack of access to electricity. That there you go, because typically these guys, they bomb the generators and take out the electricity infrastructure, adequate water and sanitation, education and nutrition, food. So they destroy the schools. We see how these people fight. They destroy the water, destroy the food, destroy the schools, and all of this stuff, and they expect people to still live a normal life. Not gonna happen. For example, over 1 in 4 people in conflict affected countries lacks access to electricity, compared to just over 1 in 20 in more stable regions. Similar disparities are evident in areas such as education, nutrition, and childhood mortality. Furthermore, deprivations are markedly more severe in nutrition, access to electricity, and access to water and sanitation for poor people caught in conflict relative to those who are impoverished in more peaceful settings. Hi, Kaden. How you doing? Good to see you back. Thanks for stopping by. So, the focus on Afghanistan. The MP also revealed that over half of the world's 1.1 billion poor are children under the age of 18, or 584 million. Globally, nearly 28% of children live in poverty, compared with 13.5% of adults. It also includes an in-depth case study of Afghanistan, where 5.3 million more people fell into multidimensional poverty during the turbulent period from 2015 2016 and 2022 to 2023. Furthermore, data from last year shows that nearly two-thirds of Afghans were poor. All right, don't worry, kid, and good to see you, man. Stay up. Uh, Mr. Steiner called for more action to support people living in multidimensional poverty. We need resources and access to specialized development and early recovery interventions to help break the cycle of poverty and the crisis, he said. Eradicate Poverty and End Discrimination. The MPI was published as the world marked the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, observed annually on 17th of October. This year's theme focuses on ending social and institutional discrimination against people living in poverty. Eradicating poverty is an essential foundation for humane, dignified societies that leave no one behind. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in his message to mark the day. Although poverty is a global plague affecting millions, he stressed that it is not inevitable, but the direct result of the choices that societies and government make or fail to make. Put people first. The Secretary General said ending global poverty and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) requires government shaping institutions and systems that put people first. It demands that we prioritize investments in decent work, learning opportunities, and social protection that offer ladders out of poverty. It demands that we prioritize investments in decent work, learning opportunities, and social protection that offer ladders out of poverty, he said. And it calls on us to fully implement the new Pact for the Future by supporting an SDG stimulus and reforming the global financial architecture to help the developing countries invest in their people. UN member states adopted the Pact for the Future in September, which covers sustainable development, international peace and security, science and technology, youth and future generations, and transforming global governance. Receive daily updates direct. No, this is there just telling you. So these are from the findings there. So not that much left for that particular. Um, so so we have here how war impacts the poor. Let's take a look at this one here and see what they are saying, because all these articles, um, because I'm just reading this article because just to give can no this page can we it's gonna open, look like it's gonna open. Okay, so how war impacts the poor. So just some beautiful little kids here, like five beautiful little children here. No man, I don't know if I don't know if those kids are still alive. The introduction of the Sustainable Development Goals SDGs are marked a deadline. The world has 15 years to eradicate global poverty. However, in order to achieve this goal, the causes of global poverty must be carefully analyzed. One such factor is how war impacts those who are living in poverty. Afghanistan, Iran, Sub Saharan Africa, Syria, and others continue to be plagued with war and violence, and many individuals fall into what is known as a poverty trap. While peaceful communities are escaping poverty and violence, corrupt government leaders often leads to war, which pushes societies into poverty. Researchers from Stanford University studied the correlation between war and poverty and found four criteria that explain how war affects the poor. Low GDP. Statistical research on poverty and conflict suggests that countries within the 50th percentile or for income have a 7 to 11% risk experiencing civil conflict. On the other hand, the countries within the 10th percentile have a risk that rises to 15 to 18%. For example, according to the World Bank, the Middle East has experienced a 30% decrease in GDP per capita since 1999, because that's when they really start up this bombing campaign here. According to Stanford's research, A 1% increase in GDP growth could reduce the risk of internal conflict by roughly 1%. Large youth population. Almost 60% of the world's poor are under the age of 25. With high youth populations, research shows that parents have more children in developing countries to cope with the lack of environmental resources in impoverished areas. Long-term demographic and economic data indicate that high fertility raises absolute levels of poverty by slowing economic growth, reducing the poverty reduction that growth would have helped deliver, and skewing the distribution of consumption against the poor. The UN Population Fund reports poor education systems compared to the national secondary school net enrollment of 92% between 2000 and 2004, developing countries had a mere 30% secondary school enrollment. By increasing schools enrollment by 10%, the average risk of conflict can drop 3%. Dependence on natural resources. Natural resources dependence has been linked to both rebellion and a weak government. Previous research by Stanford University showed that only high value, easily extracted resources, including agriculture and diamonds, further increases the likelihood of war. Thus, from understanding these four criteria, it is clear that global leaders will have to collaborate and find solutions for people who are trapped in poverty due to war. So that was an article done by Alexandra Corman. Right? So here you go, folks. This sums it up nicely for you. Um, yeah. So let me click on poverty and see what they say about poverty. So definition of poverty here looks like it's a long definition here. Poverty is defined as the state of one who lacks a social acceptable amount of money or material possessions, often resulting in the inability to meet basic needs such as food, shelter, and healthcare. It encompasses various dimensions, including economic, social, and political factors, and can be influenced by systemic issues like inequality and lack of access to education and healthcare. Poverty is not just about income, it also involves inadequate access to essential services and the social exclusion, which can prevent individuals from living a dignified life. Efforts to combat poverty often involve government welfare programs and international initiatives aimed at improving livelihood and access to resources. For a deeper understanding of poverty, including its causes and effects, you can refer to sources like Britannica, Investopedia, and the World Bank. So that's a decent little definition of poverty there. Uh, so, because we are looking at poverty here, folks. Let me see if I can do so. How are causes poverty? Let's say Iraq. Poverty in Iraq. Let's try that and see what happened. So, because we're Googling right now, folks. So it said the war in Iraq has significantly contributed to poverty through various factors. Economic disruption. The war has led to widespread violence, displacement, and destruction of infrastructure, severely impacting the economy. So, read more. So, economic disruption. The war has led to widespread violence, displacement, and the destruction of infrastructure, severely impacting the economy and basic services. So, social instability, ethnic and sectarian violence have created a climate of fear and instability, making it difficult for Iraqis to access jobs and services because that's what war does. Infrastructure damage. Ongoing conflict has damaged essential infrastructure, limiting access to electricity, sanitation, and clean water, which are crucial for our living standards. Corruption and mismanagement. Administrative corruption and mismanagement have further exacerbated the economic hardship, making it challenging for Iraqis to improve their living conditions. Climate change impact. The war has also been exacerbated by climate change, which threatens agriculture production and food security, contributing to the overall poverty crisis. These factors collectively illustrate how war has entrenched poverty in Iraq, affecting the lives of millions. So this is we are in Iraq because we're trying to be trying to narrow it down, trying to be a little more specific right now. All right, so poverty in Iraq. Many countries in the Middle East are dominated by oil production and exporting, and Iraq is no different. 95% of its exports are from oil. Like other resources rich countries, like other resource rich countries. However, this abundance of profit potential has not translated to a higher standard of living for the average Iraqi citizen. Furthermore, economic progress and the social development has been hindered by ethno-sectarian violence, severe setbacks in infrastructure, and a poor educational quality. A number of complex challenges face Iraq today. Main causes of poverty in Iraq. Social and political instability by civil war. The occupation of Iraqi territory the occupation of Iraqi territory beginning in 2003 removed some of the barriers to outright sectarian violence by the institution of democracy. Iraq has traditionally been separated into three regions associated with people groups who took residency within. Kurds 15% of the population in the north, Shia Arabs 45 to 55% in the south, and Sunni Arabs 30% in the regions in between and the west. Tens of thousands of Iraqis died in the 5 years following the invasion of Iraq, but sectarian violence, usually in the form of terrorist attacks, persists today. Not only has this endangered Iraqi civilians to the extent of displacing up to 2.2 million people since 2003, but it also makes trade and business incredibly dangerous. The simple act of moving goods about the country is disrupted by armed violence. De- Degradation and destruction of infrastructure. Both the ongoing civil war and the invasion of 2003 significantly damaged communication and transportation means. While the Internal Reconstruction Fund for Iraq asserts that Iraq's infrastructure was among the best in the Middle East before the 1990s, today for most Iraqis there is limited access to electricity, sanitation, and the clean water supply. An Oxfam briefing from 2007 report that most homes in Baghdad and major cities receive only 2 hours of electricity per day. Furthermore, where there may be working worlds and aid to be given, armed groups and Iraqi security forces may abruptly surround an area during military operations. Sudden changes in the access to towns and cities pose major constraints on NGOs' ability to deliver a humanitarian response. Destabilize education system. Like infrastructure, the education system in like infrastructure, the education system in Iraq was an example to other countries in the region before the 1990s. However, with the displacement that followed the invasion, the state of education administration suffered. According to Oxfam, 92% of children surveyed had learning impediments largely attributed to the current climate for fear. Save the Children UK reported that over 800,000 children were not in school, an increase of 200,000 students in 2004. Displacement not only removed much needed teachers from schools, but also brought large amounts of internally displaced refugees to seek shelter in school facilities in some communities. While the regime change has sparked an overhaul in curriculum and gender equality, the accompanying instability has undermined those improvements. The situation in Iraq has been discussed by a number of NGOs focusing on reform of programs already in place. For example, the Public Distribution System (PDS) is a universal ration program, but its main obstacle lies in the targeting and distribution. It does not effectively target those who are at great risk for slipping into absolute poverty. A number of reports assert that if the Iraqi government used funds available to it from oil exports, these difficulties could be addressed. However, until ethno-sectarian violence can be resolved and security restored, steps forward will be accompanied by backward steps as well. Naomi Doresami. That's the person who wrote this article here. All right, folks, I think I'm going to leave it there for now. So, we're looking at the causes of poverty. What causes poverty? I'm going to be doing more of these articles here. So, please like and subscribe. And, let me know if you want more of these type of, you want me to come and read more of these articles to you. So that way we can, have a good look at the poverty and understand that something is causing poverty. You know what I mean? All right, folks. Ryan here with a new video, and I am looking forward to see you soon in a brand new video. So I wanna do more of these lives, folks. So but please let me know that if these lives actually educate you or inform you in any way, shape, or form. All right then, folks. Bye for now. Take care. Talk to you soon.